My name's Maya Wallace. I was born in 1988 in Glasgow. I grew up initially with my mother and father, who were both social workers. And after a few years we moved to the west of the city. It was just my mum and my brother. Initially my childhood was quite lonely, so I didn't have a wide social circle. It was very small, so I would spend my days at school, and after school I would come home. So then it would just be me, my mum and my brother. And what I would do, we'd watch TV. That was a big feature in our childhood. We didn't do a lot of outdoor activities in the sense of things that you would go and pay to do. What we would do would be making jewellery, playing with my dolls. I was very active in lots of sports, gymnastics, athletics. I enjoyed a lot of outings with my mum, biking, home baking, things like this. In summer I became very active, so I'd go and stay with my grandmother and my grandfather in Ayrshire, and it was activity after activity which I loved. We would go swimming every single day, we would go into town, we would go shopping, we would do more baking, which I loved because my gran is an amazing cook. I didn't have any religious views as a child. We didn't grow up with a religion, so there was no Bible in the house, no Quran, there was nothing like that. My family, my wider family, so my aunts and uncles, they're scientists, so a lot of the views that I had maybe came from them. So there was no impact, do I believe in God, is there a God? There was no such discussions. I found out when I was much, much older, speaking to my mum about religion, that apparently I used to go to Sunday school, but I have no recollection of that whatsoever. So in high school I took religious education, much to the dismay of my teachers. I decided to switch subjects because I wanted to learn a little bit more about religion. At this stage I had a desire to get some answers, not to adopt a religion, not to become Christian or a Sikh or Catholic. It was just to find the answers to these questions I had since I was a young girl. Now at school, I didn't get those answers. The religions that they taught, they didn't make any logical sense. And I thought, why would I have faith? This is from God, because surely God should be able to explain to me simply the answers. So my high school didn't teach Islam. At the time, it was quite superficial. They said that they couldn't teach Islam because they didn't have a religious education teacher who'd studied that religion. Either way, I was happy. To me, it wasn't a real religion, it was barbaric. The Muslims were crazy nutcases. They were just people that would terrorise innocent people, they would blow up buildings. So for me, I was glad. I didn't think that I would ever become Muslim, that I would ever entertain the idea of Islam. So it's quite ironic now. I am a Muslim. I had no interaction with people of other ethnicities, of other religions. There was perhaps 2 or 3 students in my school, but they were very westernised. They had adopted our culture, so I had no real ability to see what really is Islam, what is a Muslim. So from there on in I thought, well, I've learned about the real religions. They're a load of rubbish, I don't believe in them, so I just carried on. I just became a normal Scottish teenager. I done what you would expect of any sort of British teenager. I went out clubbing, I drank alcohol, just had a laugh. There was no point to it. Looking back, I just think at that time I thought that's what you did with your life, but to me now it just seems pointless. And where my journey into Islam began was in 2005 I started working in a call centre. And in that call centre it was predominantly Pakistani people that were in there that were Muslims. And they were not crazy. They were not anything that I had imagined, that the media had portrayed. And in actual fact, they became my best friends. And this is the first time I felt I had real, true friendship, where these people really cared for me, I really cared for them. And there was a group of us. So there was Saima, there was Shakila, there was Talib, Nabil and Atif. And it was us lot together, and I would just, initially it was just, I was interacting with them and we would just do normal things, go to the cinema, we would go out for meals. But one thing that stood out to me was the fact that what they done was very respectful. They had a lot of respect for themselves. They wanted to have a good image. There was a lot of things they wouldn't do. So they wouldn't come out clubbing with me. You know, once I had a birthday, I invited them and they declined, and I couldn't understand why. So slowly, it was just their behaviours, their mannerisms that introduced me to Islam. When I was working in the call centre with the other Muslims, one of the most profound moments for me was actually during Ramadan, and I remember the moment sort of very clearly. We were in the Avon's office in Baird Street, and my group of friends that I'd mentioned earlier, they were fasting and they were about to open their fast. And Saima, she actually handed me a box of spring rolls that her mother had made, and she offered them to me if I wanted some. And to me that was just such a profound moment. You know, here I am, having eaten all day, probably not even realising, you know, drinking in front of them, having water or something, and they're offering me food. They're breaking their fast with me. And that was a really profound moment for me. So something happened in that moment. I became curious. What are these Muslims doing? They're starving themselves and giving their food away to me. Like, who am I? Why are they doing this? And then I started having questions. You know, what is Islam? Why are they Muslim? You know, are these kind attributes that they have, their upbringing? Is it just these specific people? Is it part of Islam? What is it? And so I started to ask them questions. I started to inquire, be inquisitive. And something that really shook me is that they weren't proud. Well, I think this, or I feel this, or I know that. They said, this is what the Quran says, this is what the Sunnah says, this is what the Hadith says. They had proof for everything. And never at any point did they say to me, just believe, just have faith, we know this is the truth. They didn't tell me that, they gave me the answers, and when they didn't know the answers, they would go and find out, and they would be humble enough to admit, I don't know, I can't answer that, I can't tell you. So here I was, standing Islam in the face, and it was the truth. I couldn't deny it was the truth. But I wasn't ready to accept being a Muslim. I never wanted to adopt a religion, I just wanted to know the answers, and I thought that would be enough. But in learning about Islam, I realised that believing is not enough. Islam is a way of life. They've got their own economical, political, social, legal system.